Hello, and welcome to the Blue Shadow Podcast. My name is Joey,
I'm Dan.
and today we are very, very excited to talk about the season series, hopefully season finale of Skeleton Crew. That's episode 8, The Real Good Guys. I want to start off by asking you, Dan, what did you think overall of this episode?
Oh, overall, I thought it was very good, a very fitting end to the saga that we've been dealt so far.
Absolutely. It was
Um,
so rewarding.
it was nothing, just speaking of the show as a whole, nothing really made me feel bad about myself watching it,
I think
which
that's
is the first time that's happened.
That's important. And I don't think it always happens, and I don't think it always has to happen. But I think this show reinforces, and we'll talk about it when we get into themes a little bit more, like some of the classic themes of Star Wars, like that aren't always there. And I love that about
Hmm.
this show. For me, I was like exhilarated watching it, and if you listen to us at all, you know that I am a big Jedi person, and having the lightsaber here was nice. But this is one of the first times where I've been like as invested as I would be in a lightsaber fight in what was happening. I normally, and then we can talk about how like things were cutting back and forth between like the pirates attacking in the space battle and that KB escaping, that kind of stuff, and then the more like
Hmm.
character grounded dialogue stuff. I was so invested in both aspects of it because of reasons we're going to talk about that I just love this
Hmm.
so much. I did want to say, like, for me personally, I liked every single episode more and more and more and more. And that doesn't always happen with these shows.
Hmm.
How did you feel about that? Like, I just felt like it just escalated and continuously.
I feel like it was one of the few times where they treated the show like a show. You often bring up that you feel Disney Plus shows are long movies where they hit the
I'm
pause button.
I'm still going to talk about that, but yes, this is easily the most, maybe other than but Andor kind of had to like arcs. It was a little different, but this is of
Yeah.
this style in the Mandoverse, if you will. I think this is the most complete, most well structured show for the format that they're given.
Hmm. They
And
made the most of the 38-minute episodes.
absolutely in the like I think we could have been in here. I guess we'll start with my one slight issue first, and then we can dive into just like the characters and the plot and stuff. And Dan knew what he was doing. He's baiting me here, but I think that this show was fantastic. I think they did everything right in terms of managing the
But
like. The but is I wanted like I would have loved 12 episodes, classic TV style 22 episodes. Like I think it hit all the beats that it needed to. I felt everything I was supposed to feel with these characters. But imagine how much richer it would feel if you got to like spend more time with these characters.
and I think we need to acknowledge here that that's not a gripe with the showrunners
Absolutely no,
at all.
it's the system that they're playing in.
Right. They were dealt a hand and made the most out of that hand in that aspect.
And I would say they probably did a better job again playing within the confines that they have been given. I think they probably did the best job of any of the Disney Plus shows that we've seen in Star Wars.
Hmm.
That's not to say it's my favorite. That's not to say what, but the structure and the way that they kind of seeded everything was just so good. Can we talk about one more thing before we dive into like the
Yes.
characters and
Uh,
the plot and stuff? I so appreciated the reservation and the simplicity of this story. Reservation, by that I mean like I was half expecting to see like Luke pop out of an X-wing at the end, and I love cameo. I love the cameos, love the that kind of stuff that's been
mhm.
happening recently, but I so appreciate their restraint at not doing that here. Such a strength of this show that they leaned on the characters that they've built and not necessarily pulling in anything else. There's, of course, the X-wings and recognizable things, but they really relied on these characters. And simplicity doesn't mean that there's no nuance or deeper things, and we'll talk about that. But I just really loved how the show could be followed by a child, and the show could be enjoyed by the most veteran Star Wars fan. And I just think there's a little bit of magic to that that again isn't always there.
Hmm.
Anything
Yeah,
anything you feel about those?
they it was very accessible. Um, like you said, you could watch it as a child and be okay, that's the bad guy. That's not good. and it's also approachable because it's kids
It is. Like
for
I
that
even
younger
think
generation.
my mom could watch this. I don't think she'd really love it, but like my mom could wouldn't be like, "Who's that? What's that? Why is that?"
Hmm.
Because we don't know either.
Everything was, and what they wanted us to know was spelled out for us,
Hmm. And I love
just
that.
reinforced.
Yes. And we'll let's go into the kind of the we'll just do a quick overview of the plot. We've been doing our skeleton reviews a little less structured than we have in the past. Just going to kind of give a broad overview of what happened here. They really did a kind of a fake out with the Jod turning on the lightsaber last episode because Jod quickly sends everyone but Fern and her mom home to be watched by the droids. Jod, Fern, and her mom go up to the tower, see the supervisor, realize it's a robot, which is cool. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. And then we see Fern, or I'm so sorry, Wim, Neil, KB, and Wim's dad, Wendell, undergo this plan to, get KB out to call Kim to summon the New Republic. And, you know, long story short, we get through all of that. We see each of the characters play their own role in making this thing happen. And that's one of my favorite things about this episode that we'll talk about. But then, we have this dialogue between it. We see a really climactic mental battle, really emotional battle in the supervisor's tower. And then the New Republic's able to save the day from the pirates. Any of those elements, not so much character wise, but plot wise, resonate with you?
Ooh, how so? Like
Like, was
anything
there
stick
something like
out?
your favorite part, like something you were watching where I was like, oh, like when they were on those speeders running away from the pirates, it was just, I was like, yeah, good. This is so, get away.
Yes. I really enjoyed the scene when the barrier came down and the
It,
realization of the people seeing stars for the first time.
uh-huh. And it's so, how we talked about accessible. It's like, it's a metaphor for like,
Hmm.
maturing and keeping yourself open to new ideas and stuff. But also at the most simple level, it's revealing what's really out there. Like, and then I just think that's such a strong way to show what they're trying to show with it. You want to go through the characters?
Yeah,
I want to start with Jod.
go go right ahead. Let's
You
let's
want
hear
me
your
you want
thoughts
me
on
to
the
take on first?
turncoat.
I
Yeah.
I loved what this episode did for Jod. I'm going to start by saying I think like I feel like you're probably excited to see me this excited about this show, first of all, because I was not as like hot on it when it first started.
Hater.
I'm not a hater. I'm just bitter about the
Not
accolade. I loved
anymore.
it. No, not anymore. This brought a big smile on my face. But for Jod, my favorite part about it was that he could have killed all of them, ended everything right there. And I think that's part of the nuance I was talking about. Is like I don't think that Jod wanted anything bad to happen to these kids or their parents at all, because he could have
No,
easily
I
done
agree.
that.
I He was, for as sleight of hand he's been throughout the series, he's always been very direct. And I understand that's a little oxymoronic, but he never lied in the sense that he doesn't want to hurt them.
Hmm.
He's just looking out for himself. He's going to do what he needs to do, and that'll be it.
Hmm.
And like you said, he could have made them, killed them instantly, and would have been over.
Even when Wim had the lightsaber, which I thought was an awesome like progress for Wim, and we'll talk about him with like turning a lightsaber, like pretending with a lightsaber, turning it on incorrectly, and then turning it on like triumphantly. He could have pulled that out of his hand, like and like how devastated he was when he like they thought that KB died. Like that's not someone who
Hmm.
doesn't care or doesn't even
Right.
like you can tell he has formed a relationship with these kids whether he wants to or not.
Hmm.
Um, go ahead, go ahead.
What do you, there was at the end when the frigate got shot down,
Hmm.
and there was a very cinematic Jod walking to the window, and it pans to his face, and he was kind of smiling.
I think
Do
that
you
can
think?
go ahead.
Do you think that is him having a change of heart or him realizing that his burden is over, that he's no longer kind of bound by piracy?
I think maybe it's kind of both because I want to draw a connection to that moment and with when they were all getting on the elevator and Wim says Jod and he kind of gives him like a little like go ahead like I'm not coming with you. I think that like that's kind of him recognizing that like he's been calling the kids like sheltered and inexperienced and not living in reality. And I think like he's been talking about how like there's bad people everywhere. And he even said like in the galaxy there's a few pinpricks of light and in the sea of
Was
darkness, that kind of stuff.
wait,
Um,
was that Jod or Fern?
Jod said that. Fern said there's good people. We're going to talk about that. That's a great
Okay.
thematic lesson. But Jod said about the few pinpricks of light, because Fern was emphasizing that there's good even in the bad, and Jod was doing the opposite.
Hmm.
But I think that like this is Jod kind of recognizing that like his perspective was wrong, and people did come to help, and there is good in the galaxy.
Hmm.
He wasn't the one to initially experience it, and I think that turning away from women and looking at that, I think he's definitely not a good guy, but I think he might
No.
be on the track to being a very interesting, like whatever next step Jod takes, whether we see it, read it, whatever. I don't think we're done with him. I think it's going to be an interesting kind of like Hondo type thing where he's definitely not like he's not Obi-Wan Kenobi, but he's also not Palpatine.
Right. I
What do
thought it
you
was
think?
oh, I had a thought and it left my head. Go
Someone
ahead, give
just
me a
kept
second.
rambling.
I think no, I got it. I think that was the first time that Jod ever experienced, the second time he experienced selflessness in his life, when they brought down the barrier and exposed themselves to the rest of the galaxy,
Hmm.
which I thought was really cool because I think that kind of plays into why he reacted at the end the way he did because he's never had to see it before. And that's just not the life he lives. I think he was almost in shock and awe that they were willing to do that.
That's I think he respect I think he maybe didn't respect them prior to this altercation, but I think he certainly respects them and their decision making. And we'll talk about the kids' skills that they've acquired and how they built on their natural skills. It was so good. Do you want to talk about Jod slight backstory drop?
Yeah.
I want to
So
start
we
by
find
go ahead.
oh, go ahead. No,
I
I
was
was
going
gonna
to
say
ask you a
we
question.
finally got to hear about Jod's backstory, though. Was he a Jedi? What was he? And so he said that he was found post Order six. Was it post? I think it was post Order
Yes. Well,
66.
he didn't really say, but the implication that she was ragged and they hunted her down, it's post Order 66.
Yeah, and then probably met the Inquisitors.
Oh yeah. What did you think?
Yeah.
I have two questions for you. What did you think of that backstory? And follow up to that, are you happy that they didn't cut to some flashback and it was the Grand Inquisitor and they're talking about some particular Jedi? Like I think
No, I
most shows would have done that. So what do you think
yeah,
of it?
I enjoyed how it was just a blip because I think it's often lost of how many Jedi were purged
Hmm.
and not every Jedi lived at the temple. And I think that part was really cool. Um, I did see a tweet that I wanted to send to you, but obviously I didn't. It was Jod is what Kanan would have been if he didn't meet Hera.
I saw that and I completely agree with that. I love it because
Yeah.
and I think in a way, Jod in this situation is also kind of like Ezra too. It's like it shows if Kanan was killed, Ezra might have been. We met Ezra stealing and like you know doing a baby version of what Jod
Scavenging, yeah.
like. I think it's a great parallel to both Kanan and Ezra, and I just love that so much. And we were watching, my wife and I were watching this episode, and we were like, he is such a good. like villain. Jude Law did such a fantastic job. He was so like, again, the word I keep coming back to is nuanced. Like
Hmm.
we don't have many characters like this that are clearly self-motivated, but also not like evil. And I just think it's such a unique
Yeah,
dynamic to have within a single character.
I totally agree.
Anything else to add about Jod? I want to do like a what could happen next at the end, so we can kind of
Hmm.
save that for that. But is there anything else you want to talk about with Jod?
I thought his interactions with the parents, especially, were unique because it's almost like he respected the kids more than the parents.
Yes.
He knew that he could control the parents, but the kids were the wild cards,
Uh-huh. Because you
which
could tell
proved to be true.
his threats were really at the parents. Like he really was very transparent about the fact that he wasn't going to. I mean, maybe not transparent, but he was very clear that if he was going to harm someone, it was going to be the
He
adults.
Yeah, he never said he was going to hurt the kids.
No.
When he first in the previous episode when they were on the ship and he threatened them for the first time with the lightsaber, he said, "I will know who your parents are so I can chop them up bit by bit."
Uh-huh. The
Never
threats are
once
always to the
threatened
parents.
them.
Oh
Hmm.
man, Jod's so I don't love like I love him, but I don't love him. It's so good.
You're allowed to like a villain. It's okay.
I like Jod. And let's go since you talked about the parents. Let's take a quick detour and talk
Yeah,
about Wendell and what is Fern's mom's name? Farah?
I think so.
Let's just say
That sounds
Wim's
familiar.
dad, Fern's mom. KB and Neil's parents didn't play as much of a role here, and I think that's because they had a more their challenges in life were not rooted in their home life, and I think that's why those parents took a step back in this episode. And we clearly had some
Hmm.
conflict between Wim and his dad and Fern and her mom. So I think that's why these guys got the focus. But what did you think of the parents in this episode?
Ooh. You could finally see the government official in I think her name is Farah.
Hmm.
That facade go down.
It took so long.
And we
I
and we
was
got
so frustrated.
the mother. Yes. Oh, so good. And Wim's dad finally. I still don't know whether he believed Wim the whole time until they like at what point was it, do you think, that he finally was like, okay, Wim's probably telling the truth?
I feel like maybe when they get like the fact that he definitely didn't want to believe him when Neil and KB were coming, but I think like when he maybe it is as symbolic as him making that jump over the chasm and like
Hmm.
realizing and like maybe when they get on the ship and he sees that it's locked in like I think it had to have happened before that for him to be so gung ho about like we're going to go to the supervisor's tower, which I
Hmm.
imagine is not a place. Her name is Farah, by the way, but
Hmm.
I think we had a similar moment with him though, where he there was this like distance between the parents and their children, these two specifically, and we saw them come together in a way that was really, really, really satisfying.
I agree.
Like I
And
said though, I
then
was super frustrated with Farah though.
I
It's
me
like
too. And
pull
even
the
in the face
lever.
of even before that, Fern was clearly upset and on edge the whole time. And Farah immediately says, "Stand up straight. We're going to meet the supervisor."
Hmm. And it
It's
seems
like,
like we'll talk about the supervisor in a second. Sorry, I got a little excited.
nah, no, it's okay. We can move into the supervisor because that's going to play a role into, I think, how Farah transitioned.
Yeah, I
Much
well,
like you said, Wim's dad, Wendell, had to physically and metaphorically take the leap. I think
one more
the
thing about
supervisor was the catalyst.
absolutely. One
Go.
more thing about Wendell before we move on to the supervisor. I just I was very hard on him in our first episode. I thought he was so rude to Wim, and I just think he really fully like made up for hit what like that. Like he clearly was struggling, but I think it's good now. Anyway, the supervisor, it's a droid. What'd you think?
Makes sense. It's not something you would think of, but as soon as you see it, it's like, yeah, that tracks.
It does. I liked it. I didn't really have they didn't build it up in such a way as I think is often the case in Star Wars where it's who's under the mask, who's in the tower, who do we know that this could be? And I think this was a very satisfying, though not necessarily expected, you know, turn of events.
And then once you look at it, then everything else starts to fall into place. Like, why else would there be droids controlling everything?
Hmm.
Like, why would the droids have so much power? How did that all intertwine? And then it's like, okay, that
It's basically just the
and I
supervisor.
and I feel like if you would have had a succession of supervisors, it would have been very hard for them to maintain their hiding
Hmm.
all
Because
these years
someone
with
would have
people in
disappeared.
charge.
Like,
Yeah.
and this does kind of pose a question about timing, the stuff with the supervisor. I wanted to talk about that. So happy how things are naturally flowing here. It's
Hmm.
working out well. Um, the he says, and the supervisor says, and correct me if I'm wrong here, says the last transmission we received was that the Jedi are traitors. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So that
Or maybe it was,
implies. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, I think that was it. I think that was the last one they got. Had to have been because they were expecting the Republic.
So that tells me that like this is maybe more recent. Jod used the term hundreds of years and stuff, but the term Great Works, which we've talked about before, is from the High Republic. They're getting messages about Order 66, and that's kind of the last time someone had been around, which is probably about like 30 some years, maybe 40 years ish,
Hmm.
35. But this screams to me that it's newer than Jod thinks. Still old, but not like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old.
Hmm.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
just kind of like I thought it might have been older, but this phrasing makes me think it's newer than that or more recent than that.
What's more recent?
Like Ad
Like,
Atten, the whole situation surrounding that.
well, I think it's been hidden the whole time, and I think
But
they
how
only
long has
trusted.
it been hidden is what I'm saying.
I would say probably since the High Republic. I mean, that would make sense.
I
They're
think
not going to suddenly conceal a mint.
I mean like
Like
when
it
what
was.
I'm sorry. My I think I'm not being super clear. The term great work is something that was instituted by this chancellor in the High Republic. And I think the way that Jod talks about it, it's and in the way that they use republic, it could mean like the old republic. Like way it could have started and been hidden way before even the High Republic. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at. Like this I thought it might have been older and been going on longer. But this makes me feel like it's started and was hidden around the High Republic time.
I disagree. I think it was older.
Why do you
I
say that?
think that the honestly the fact that it's run by a droid, that's how they were getting the communications the whole time. And the ship itself is pretty old. We know that. So, and we also know that the pirate that Jod references and that was SM-33's captain was a fabled pirate to Jod and the other pirates, implying that it happened a long time ago.
I mean, and long is
So
relative though. High Republic was 200 years before Phantom Menace, so this is like 250 before Jod was born, which still feels ancient and fabled. And what
I'd say it's probably a little bit older than the High Republic.
I assert then, how does great work fit in there? A very specific term.
Well,
We're gonna
I
have to
don't
agree
know.
to disagree here.
So, what's your definitive timeline? When do you think it
I
started?
don't have a definitive timeline, but I think it started during the High Republic, not the Old Republic.
Fair enough. Fair
But we
enough.
can agree to disagree on that. It's just splitting hairs at this point. It doesn't really matter, clearly. But Jod kills the supervisor, which I think, like you said, is the turning point for Farah.
Hmm.
Anything else
Do
to
you
add
think
about? Go ahead.
Farah was? Do you think Farah was disappointed that it was the droid, the supervisor, excuse me, was a droid?
Well, she knew it was a droid.
Did she?
She said like as written in the great work.
Hmm.
So she knew. I don't know that she had met the droid before, but she knew it was a droid. That's part of that the great work term coming up again is why I'm like sticking my flag into the ground.
Fair enough.
But anyway, moving on from the supervisor, we talked about everything around the kids. Are you ready to talk about the kids?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was just so good. Um, mind if I paint the picture with it with like each character, and then we can talk about it. We'll
By
go
all
character by
means.
character. I overall I want to say that like I just thought that this episode did such a great job of showing like a realistic view of like heroicism. Like it took all of them together leaning into their skills, not necessarily like one person
Hmm.
with a lightsaber. And I think that's very like inspirational. I'm like, heck yeah. So I love that. But each
Hmm.
character, they did something that built upon a skill that they might have had, but was enhanced
Hmm.
greatly by their experience. So I think we should start with maybe Neil, right?
Yeah. I
So
feel not to knock on Neil. I feel like while Neil had a lot of character growth, I feel like his floor was a lot higher than a lot of the other
yes,
kids.
and I think that's why he had maybe less, stress story wise, less responsibility
Yeah.
in the situation. But it was also without him, you don't necessarily like the Onyx Cinder might have gotten destroyed, and he was the only person on
Hmm.
that planet probably that knew about that cannon.
Yeah.
Like
That was
he,
pretty sweet.
it was, and like I think the growth moment for Neil was like when he got knocked off the ship, he was like go, and then with confidence went up, and he didn't have like the concerned little like that he has. He moved into that cannon, and I like that the cannon was just like one shot. Like it didn't have any right to last much longer than it did.
I so I just thought of something else. We've been linking the show to a lot of other famous stories. One of them just popped into my head that I also read recently, that there's a lot more parallels than I initially thought there were.
What's
And
that?
that story's The Wizard of Oz.
Neil gained his courage.
Neil gained his courage. The the supervisor being a droid was much like the Oz reveal.
That's kind of
They
cute. I
went
didn't
on
even think of that.
this adventure, and each kid gained
A
what they were
thing.
looking for from this experience, and it was something they've had themselves this whole time.
At the end, I think we should, after we're done talking about all of them, I think we should come up with like the one word that they gained.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
anything else to add about Neil?
No. Love Neil.
Love Neil. I
So
love the
shout out
confidence.
Neil making the one shot worth it too.
Hmm. It was just enough to get KB out of there. And he was in the bath again. I loved it. It's so funny.
Different different forms of punishment.
Oh man. Want to go on to KB?
Yeah.
KB, obviously her job was to, it kind of fell off where like they needed to, fan out. But KB's job was to break through the barrier in the Onyx Cinder and be the one that contacts Kim. And I think we talked about how Kim took an extra second with KB because she kind of related to her. And
Hmm.
I think it was so special that KB was the one that actually made the call.
Yes.
And I think
I
that, go ahead.
do you think any of the other kids would have had a way to contact Kim?
I wonder if that's very granular. I don't know. Maybe KB had it like programmed in there.
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. But I think that the KB growth was like she's always had these skills, but she had to like learn that she could push through some of the difficulties that she has and be
Right.
confident and actually execute on them.
And she doesn't have to live in Fern's shadow. She doesn't have to turn to Fern for approval,
Hmm. And
which we saw in the beginning. She was like the Robin to
yes,
Fern's Batman.
now they're both bat people. Um, This is a great opportunity to talk about SM-33 too. I was so relieved that he was alive.
Yeah,
Whatever
droids
droids are.
hard to kill droids
It
because
was
when we were
glorious.
watching, yeah, when we were watching, I was watching with my girlfriend who did want to watch this one. So
Oh,
we did watch the finale
she
together.
likes a
Um,
resolution.
yes. And when they killed the supervisor, she was very worried. And I said, droids don't stay dead in Star Wars
No, I don't know that
ever.
they're gonna revive the supervisor, but if they wanted to, it could. Whoop, supervisor's back.
I'm sure he's on a flash drive somewhere.
Oh yeah, back up. Hide him with the map to Luke Skywalker. Um,
Like, could you
I
imagine?
that would be so funny. But I loved how like they had to hold his head up, or like KB had to hold his head, or he had to hold his own head. I thought it was so good.
Hmm.
Did you did you think at all that they were going to kill KB?
And I thought if any of them were going to go, it was going to be her. Um, but I'm glad they didn't.
I
Star Wars
like
doesn't kill kids very often.
no. And then they'd never show it on screen, I feel like. But
No.
I I really I knew in my head that they weren't gonna kill KB, but in my heart I was like they how I in my mind rationalized while we were watching. I said to my wife, it didn't explode. She's fine.
Yeah, that
And even if it did explode, she still could have been fine.
yeah. Especially with SM-33 there.
Oh yeah. Great
Who's
character.
flown enough to see the writing on the wall when a ship's going down?
Maybe they have an escape pod on there.
Maybe.
Um that's KB. And now we can do Fern and then Wim. Sound good to you?
Yeah.
All right. For Fern, I felt like her power was not leading and doing, it was tapping into her emotions and communicating clearly, which I think was her weakness. She needed to overcome her like brashness and, be able to articulate her thoughts, which was able to begrudgingly convince her mother that she needed to listen to them. And I think that was really
Yeah.
powerful for Fern.
Oh yeah. It's and it was everybody's always relying on her from what we see. I mean, they designated her the captain right away.
Uh-huh.
So this whole time she was leading, had to make decisions and had to be the brash leader, the the strong one of the group.
Hmm.
And like you said, when she was finally able to open up and show a little vulnerability, she was able to get a lot further than she would have.
Yeah, between that and her learning how her actions affected KB, I think those two
Hmm.
things were what really propelled her to be able to do this and like show her
Hmm.
emotions and share feelings with her mom, which is awesome.
Yeah.
That was a pretty simple one. Ready to wrap up with a win?
Yeah.
All right. I feel like Wim's skill that he had was his imagination and his faith in the galaxy, kind of
Hmm.
rooted in the Jedi. And I think that like his Jedi perspective was what allowed them to do all this stuff and like overtake Jod's pirate perspective. But from like him convincing his dad to being very confident that they needed to do this and like really being the one to like go in there and stall and have the ability to do that and then Fern buying into it, which I
Hmm.
thought was awesome. I mean, she knew it was nonsense, but like her jumping
She
in,
she didn't hesitate.
not
Where
at all.
I feel earlier she would have hesitated
Rolled her eyes,
and
sighed,
would
and
have
then did it.
called called him dumb or something like that.
I
Childish.
yes. You, Dan, have been a little. If you haven't listened to our blind rankings episode that we released last week, Dan rated Wim rather low, both knowing and not knowing he was coming. Do you feel like he atoned for the stuff that you didn't like about him?
I feel the problem would not have been resolved without Wim, and I think he made up for his past actions.
I agree.
Of the group, he matured a lot, but I will also say he was the one who had the most room to mature.
Yeah, it's like how Neil didn't have to go very far to change for the better, Wim had to go very far.
Yes, and I think he got there
Yes. And I think it was
because
go ahead.
remember the only reason they got locked in there is because Wim started pressing buttons.
Yep. And I like that in the last episode he said he regretted pressing the buttons, and here it's like he was able to like come full circle. And we'll talk about the New
Hmm.
Republic in a little bit, I feel like, but I really like at the end when you end on Wim looking up and the hopes like the hope that's captured and Wim looking at the New Republic ships. I just feel like that now is like Wim is a character that you want to follow now and understand what's happening to him. Where at the beginning you're probably like, oh, like he earned
Like, okay, yeah,
that moment.
yeah. He was the main character and finally started doing main character things.
Yes. And again, main character things don't need to be cutting down the legs of ATSTs and ATATs with a lightsaber. It's being there for the people around them and all those, basic life lesson stuff that Star Wars teaches us.
Hmm.
Now, let's go through Wizard of Oz style, and you, as the person who's read it, can tell us what each character gained. How about Neil?
Courage,
Definitely, I have no notes. KB,
confidence,
no notes as well. Fern,
humility.
compassion would be mine, but I think those are
Yeah,
in the same ballpark. Compassion makes it all C words. How
yeah.
about Wim?
Maturity.
Yep. And I think, like you said, it was all there. They had it within them, and it was just the experiences that they had to go through to awaken them.
Hmm. And
I go ahead.
they had to step out of their comfort zone for each thing.
Hmm. It's like
So
exercising. Like you have to put yourself through a little bit of pain to grow, and that's what they
no
all
pain,
did.
no gain.
No pain, no gain. I just wanted to say overall, I thought these characters were so well developed, and they seeded things in the earlier episodes that dramatically paid off in the finale here, and even prior to. I just think it was so well executed in what they wanted to do.
Hmm.
I have two additional things I want to do for the rest of this episode. I first want to talk about some themes and big ideas. We don't have to go too crazy, but themes. And then I want to talk about like what could be next. And that's where our New Republic discussion is probably going to really commence.
Yeah.
Themes. I already kind of talked about hope. Like, I think that for me was it. It was like realizing that your view of hope kind of shifts when you're maturing,
Hmm.
but how at the end of the day, hope is still what drives things forward. I think that was the most powerful lesson for me in this show.
Yeah, definitely.
Did
I think mine. Oh,
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna say it reminded me very much so of like A New Hope. Like it's not like beating you down or tearing like making you sad like you said. It's just
Hmm.
pure hope, unadulterated hope. And I really like that.
Yes, I agree.
And hope through adversity too.
Hmm.
How about you?
I think one of my big themes was teamwork,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is kind of a theme in Star Wars. We see it fairly often, having to trust others
Yes.
and having that faith that the rest of your group will pull through. I mean, we've seen that in A New Hope with Han Solo leaving and
Mm-hmm.
coming back, and at the end when each of the kids could finally rely on the other three to do what they were supposed to do. Whereas in the beginning, if the same events happened in episode one, they would not trust Wim.
That'd have been
They
a mess.
probably wouldn't trust. They wouldn't have trusted Neil either.
No. And I don't think KB would have trusted herself.
And I think Fern would have tried too hard
She would have been
to
like the
do
the group
everything.
leader in a group
Yeah,
project.
yeah. I just
I
have to do it myself mentality.
mhm. I think it also what speaks really well to that, and like you said, we see teamwork be a lesson in Star Wars, but the fact that everyone played a very specific but also essential role. No one
Hmm.
person was like we're often following Anakin, Luke, Rey, the Mandalorian, where their actions are the primary thing that resolves the story. I loved so much that the whole idea here was that their the sum was greater than the parts. And I
Yeah,
forget how
the
the saying goes.
total of the part. The sum is greater than the total of the parts, or something
Yes,
like that.
yes. And I think that is not always a lesson that comes through. And I really, really appreciated that about this.
Me too.
We could probably go on for themes for hours, but are there any more that you want to talk about?
Yeah. Hope was the big one, teamwork. And that there's always good people.
Yeah.
This is Fern's line in her plea to her mother. She said, everywhere we went in the galaxy, no matter how bad it was, there was always good people.
hmm and then you in your mind you start to see the people that helped them along the way, starting from
Yep.
like the club dancer lady to Kim. It just
Mm-hmm.
and so many more. It was so strong, and how clearly it opposed Jod's view, which is the exact opposite. And he
Yeah.
said like he was willing to kill for the few pinpricks of light, and
Mm-hmm.
his definition of light is clearly not like you know family and friends. It's probably
The
that
light
vault of
the light
credits.
is the gold. Yeah, exactly. The light reflecting off the gold.
Uh-huh. Oh, Jod. I think one other thing that we can talk about with respect to that is like Jod. I think Jod has just been so beaten down and battered by the galaxy that he kind of just does not think that these relationships are there. And the only way he's going to get people to love him, his crew, is by, getting all these credits and being able to buy everything that he wants, not realizing that that's not going to solve
Mhm.
all his problems. I mean, it definitely make him happier, but I think in
Yeah.
reality, if he clearly values, relationships, so he clearly doesn't know how to handle them. I think had he just stayed with the kids, I think he would have the relationship that he desires.
Oh yeah. Finally be accepted.
hmm And I think that kind of like stems to like him just not knowing his limits, and like they probably would have happily let him take the credits and leave, but instead he decided I'm the supervisor now,
Yep.
which definitely wouldn't have been sustainable for
Yeah.
so many reasons. All
I don't
right.
know, man.
Jod's
I
Mint.
think he'd be a good. Oh yeah. It'd be great. Probably be t-shirts.
Skim a little off the top. Um, that takes us to kind of what's next. I was hoping for like, that one last scene the next day. I fast forwarded through the beautiful credits. I loved the credits and what they meant, and like it, their kids are now part of the story, but like their story was worth telling. They lived through a
Mm-hmm.
Jedi adventure like one wanted to. And then there was nothing at the end. So I think it's smart. I think you don't want to end up in a situation like we had with the Acolyte where they're teasing incredibly amazing things, but we might not
Mm-hmm.
get the chance to see them, which sounds like the case for the Acolyte, even though I'm still holding out hope. But
Yeah.
um, what do you think could come next, is what I'll say.
Probably their introduction to the New Republic, however long that lasts. Um, because I do wanted to mention, finally got to see the New Republic be competent for the
Yes.
first time ever.
Uh-huh. I loved it. And it was
Um,
triumphant too. Like you got to see your B-Wings. You're probably excited about that.
yeah, it
The
was
answer, the Mr.
everything was
Return of the
great.
Jedi.
Oh yeah, and they were just competent for the first time. Again, I hate to just sound like a broken record, but they did what they were tasked to do and did it rather efficiently.
I'd say. It was so nice. And again, I back to the idea of we didn't cut to Carson Teva. We didn't cut to Zeb, which again, if you've listened to us at all, you know that I'm a Rebels fanatic. But I
Well,
so
he's in a Razor
appreciate
Crest now.
he is well, only if you were at D23. You don't know that if you weren't. But ugh, makes me angry. But I so appreciate that they didn't do that, because again, I feel like it makes the New Republic feel small, or makes whatever entity, when there's only really one representative, feel very small. So this felt like we're expanding the New Republic. It's effective. It's not all bad, and I think that kind of again adds some stakes and tragedy to what we know happens at the First Order.
Hmm.
You want a season two?
And Kim said,
Sorry,
"Oh
we'll do
yeah,
that after.
I wanted a season 2 when the show started."
Oh, you just love pirates. What are you saying about Kim?
Kim was not wrong. She said in her message to KB, "The New Republic is good at dealing with pirates."
Hmm. And
And
they certainly are.
by God, they were.
I now a second season. What do you want that to look like? Slash these characters appearing in a movie.
It's tough because what's the big conflict going to be? Most likely, how do they assimilate as this ultra wealthy country planet that doesn't have a standing army, doesn't really have a government?
And you know the New Republic is
What,
struggling with the army because they're trying to demilitarize.
yeah. So what do they do? I feel like and now it just got this giant target.
I had this theory, and you can tell me if I clearly didn't pan out here, but what if there's some sort of connection between all the wealth on at Aten and the creation of the First Order, which clearly would have taken like enormous resources?
I mean, that makes a lot of sense because with there being no government, you're going to have people, because it's finally ruled by a person, use their influence in a way that it's never been done before.
Hmm.
Because who would you say becomes the ruler of Aten? Farah.
Yeah,
She was pretty high up there
it seemed we're made to feel like she is the highest ranking human on the planet. I feel like
from what we've seen.
hmm always in the
She's
fanciest of the
lives
clothes.
in the fanciest of the houses.
Hmm.
So I feel like it might get very political, which really doesn't stay true to what Skeleton Crew was.
In my mind, I want something, and I do want a season two. I want to be clear about that. I would love some sort of, and the creators have basically said they don't necessarily have the story, but they have ideas, and they said that they wouldn't pull a Stranger Things and pretend that the kids are like it's been 6 months and the kids are 5 years older in real life. They said they're gonna like age up with the cast, so like maybe we jump forward and maybe Wim is training to be a New Republic pilot, and I would love to see something that maybe they go into their own, separate ways, and then something unites them
Yeah,
back. Maybe Jod has
the
escaped
First
and
Order.
resurfaced. Or
Yeah.
we're too far from the First Order, but
Well, it's going to be kind of crazy because there's no ships on Aladdin. They are essentially cut off from the outside world.
and I think that the symbolic barrier going down is going to mean that they're going to assimilate in some way. But you are correct that like that's ripe to be abused. The whole deal with that end
Yeah.
because like
And they're
it's not
probably going
right.
to keep minting credits.
Yeah, like it's not right for the New Republic to come in and be like, these are our credits now.
Yeah. But if they do, who's going to stop them?
Exactly. I really think that we've done a lot with this era of Star Wars of setting things up where it like we're not directly connecting the dots to the sequels necessarily, but I think it's just creating this and we might get there, but it's creating this really dynamic setting of what the galaxy looked like in this era, and it's really exciting.
Hmm.
Anything else to add about
Yeah.
Skeleton Crew?
I just want to talk about the last scene, the last line.
Okay.
You don't have to take your assessment anymore because KB landed in the school.
Yeah, I thought that was so clever. And like
Yep.
I think it is both a really funny joke and also it's like things are changing.
Like what happens tomorrow? That's
That's
what
why I was
I
hoping
left
for
that
one
show
more scene.
right? Like there's so much vulnerability. Do they go back to work?
I mean, the streets are torn
Who
up.
streets are torn up.
This
There's
giant collapsed pirate ship.
with living pirates, they didn't die
Yeah.
because the ship did not explode. It just kind of crashed.
There we go again with that. It's true though. One last thing I'm going to talk about for the future is, and we kind of touched on it a little. What do you think happens with Jod?
I think he escapes. Um,
I don't think he's going to be in a
It's
New
just
Republic prison.
no. They
Then
might capture him
he can't do more interesting things if he's in a New Republic prison.
because how many people know he's force sensitive? Six?
Hmm.
The four kids and then the two parents?
And if he disappears, there's no way for them to find him.
No.
We don't even know his real name. We didn't talk
Yeah.
about that.
I I feel like it's Jod.
See, I don't, but I think that's me wanting more. I want it to be
That's
a
fair.
ruse. I want to hear like six more names the next time we see him. Which again,
Probably will.
I
Who,
hope there is.
who knows how many identities he'll have?
It's true. Let's end on a question. Who was your favorite character from Skeleton Crew?
Ooh. Hmm. Probably the main character, probably Jod. I know that's probably your answer as well.
If Jod is taken, and you know I don't like liking the villain, so this is great for me. I'm gonna pick Neil just because I just thought he was so fun and like such a unique embodiment of what fun in Star Wars is.
Yes, I agree.
All right.
Who's
Well,
your least favorite?
hmm. Oh, hang on. Let me run through the ending on a negative note. Let me think about who we all ran into. That weird captain on at Akron, like the dad. I didn't like him.
Yeah, he was using child soldiers.
Yeah, and just like throwing him out there. How about you?
Yeah. Ooh, none of the bad people the people that I didn't like really made it out. Um, so prob probably Brutus. I mean, he was a cool character, but he was the only one where I'm like, I'm fine with him getting shot when he couldn't move.
Yeah,
That
he
that
didn't
was
really. I think one other thing I want to say is like Vane. I thought Vane was going to be Brutus because like this character from The Mandalorian is going to be in this show. He just kind of lives there.
yeah.
That's our connection to The Mandalorian.
Yeah, he's a pirate.
Yeah, he is, and he ran away again.
Not even that high up in the rankings.
No, and I think Urkel died, or at least is implied to have died.
Went down with the ship
Yeah.
because Urkel was the first mate.
Uh-huh. I don't know his real Star Wars name. He said it, but I don't know it. Anyway,
Yeah,
that is our review of Skeleton Crew, an excellent series that we really enjoyed with an absolutely excellent finale. If there's anything that you want to talk about with Skeleton Crew, please let us know. Is there anything that we said that makes you think these people are absolutely insane? Again, we would absolutely
probably.
love to hear from you. But with that, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. And please consider giving us a comment, a subscription, a like, or a review on YouTube or the podcast platform of your choice. Consider giving us a follow on Twitter or X at Blue Shadow Pod or on Instagram at Blue Shadow Podcast. And with that, we thank you so much, and we will see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you.